Hello, welcome to our second CoRE Conversations forums. These are short, sharp lunchtime sessions for CoRE members that will happen every 2 months, and they're free. And they intended for us to dive a bit deeper into a range of topics relating to preventing violence against women and gender diverse people and improving gender equality within organisations. So my name is Jane Measday and I'm a regional consultant at Women's Health Grampians, and my colleague Angela Vanderberg is joining me this morning. This is going to be very quick, so it's only a half an hour, but if you have questions and you want to put them in the chat, we will endeavour to answer those questions with some resources that we're going to send out after this forum. And we need to let you know that we're recording this so that for people who aren't able to attend today will have access to this information. So I want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that Ange and I are presenting, and that's from Wadawurrung country in Ballarat. I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and any Aboriginal people present today. And I'd like to acknowledge that people come from a variety of Aboriginal lands attending today, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have the oldest continuous living culture in the world, and sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
I'd also like to just acknowledge, I guess, that today is Valentine's Day, Festival of Heterosexual Norms. And there are many heterosexual, cisgender and gender stereotypical associations and assumptions that come with today, Valentine's Day.
So today's theme is let's talk about sex and gender, baby. And this is a 30-minute conversation on the differences between what we mean about sex at birth and what is meant by gender. And it gives us an opportunity to explain what is meant by the letters LGBTIQA+.
And Jane, do you think most people are familiar with LGBTIQA+?
Well, I think younger people are very inclusive and respectful of diversity because they've grown up in a society that accepts and normalises a diverse range of human experiences in sex and gender, whereas there are many of us who have lived in a society with fixed social norms where topics such as this were not discussed. I mean, in Victoria, homosexuality was decriminalised in 1980. We cannot make any assumptions about people's life experiences, and we should always make the opportunity to learn the basics so that we can build a respectful and gender equality society. So our approach we're using is the principles of respect. We encourage and provide opportunities to learn, to listen, to be open and curious, and reflect on what we learn, and then see if we can apply it to our daily practices at work and at home.
Thanks, Jane. Let's dive in then to the first topic. Let's talk about sex. So what is the first question that's usually asked when a baby's born, Jane?
Yeah, is it a girl or is it a boy? And so now it's common to find the sex of the baby during pregnancy. So both my grandchildren, I know they were going to be grandsons, and we could prepare for that.
Yeah, that's right. So the sex of the baby is identified by their external sexual organs. So it's biological, and it's the sex assigned at birth. But is boy or girl the only option for sex, Jane?
Well, no, it's not. And this comes to our first explanation of one of the letters in the LGBTIQ, and that's the letter I that stands for intersex. So, Ange, what do you understand about intersex?
Yeah, so intersex covers about 45 biological conditions that cover variances in hormones, genitalia and reproductive organs, and 1.7% of babies born have intersex characteristics. It's part of the normal variation in the human experience. So I guess what we really want to get through is that sex is not a binary proposition. It's not an either or. Yeah. I'd love to show a video now, just a short kind of excerpt from Noah's story. So Noah is intersex and is a wonderful kind of advocate for intersex people. So let me just play this video.
It's not caused by illness. It isn't a disease. It's just how a lot of people are born.
11-year-old Noah loves swimming, seeing his friends and bushwalking near his home in the Northern Territory. He's also intersex, a term he describes as people born neither typically male nor female.
And to some people that's quite confusing, so for those people who are confused, we are not trans. Intersex is a totally biological condition.
Eventually, Noah's parents provided consent for him to undergo surgery to make his genitalia function and appear more typically male. It's a decision Noah wishes he could have intervened in.
I feel like I should be left how I was born, and you shouldn't do surgeries without someone's consent if they're not medically necessary.
Tiffany and Colin say they felt pushed into making a decision they now believe was a mistake.
It did feel like there was a lot of pressure.
And with hindsight, I now feel quite guilty about not investigating further and just giving my choice up.
As many as 1.7% of babies are born with some form of intersex variation. There are dozens of different conditions that fit under the umbrella term, and a range of surgeries and treatments used to change intersex people's bodies. Sometimes these medical interventions are necessary and life-saving, and can prevent cancer, but others can be deferred. It's these deferrable treatments that can make a person look more typically male or female that many in the intersex community say need to stop.
Love her.
Noah hopes those who hear his story understand why he's speaking up.
I want this to be changed. I can't change what was done to me, but I can change what is done to other people.
So that's just a snippet, I guess, of Noah's story, and we'll send out the full video with the resources. So the Human Rights Commission in 2021, October 2021, released a report that outlined the rights of people with intersex characteristics to have the right to autonomy and self-determination over their body. And Intersex Awareness Day is October the 26th of this year.
So let's talk about gender.
Okay, what do you mean by gender, Jane?
Well, gender is different from biological sex and sexuality. It's really about those socially constructed roles and behaviours and activities and attributes that a society give, considering what's appropriate for women, men, boys and girls. So that talks about, social norms, beliefs and attitudes and expectations about women and men in gender stereotypes. It talks about everyday behaviours and processes that perpetuate gendered norms and structures. And there's often structures like laws and institutions that have unequal impacts of men and women, trans and gender diverse people. And we can see that, in the way that toys are marketed. You've got the diamond ring for the little girl and the hammering rattle for the boy. And even down to, even sort of those, the colouring books. Here we've got just those gender stereotypes. We've got the beautiful girls colouring book and the brilliant boys colouring book, and they are those stereotypes that perpetuate, the gender inequality. So let's talk about gender identity or gender expression.
Thanks, Jane. So gender identity or gender expression is a person's deeply felt, internal, individual experience of gender. And this may or may not correspond with their physiology or the sex they were designated at birth. Gender identity can be expressed through people's use of pronouns. Now, we don't say preferred pronouns, we just say pronouns. And whatever pronoun a person wishes to be addressed by is the one that should be used. So gender identity includes those who are non-binary, gender fluid, gender queer, so do not identify as he or she, just as a person. And often they may use the pronouns they. And the best way, Jane, do you know the best way to know what somebody's pronouns are?
It's to ask them.
That's right, to ask them. And if you make a mistake with someone's pronouns, just correct yourself and move on. Don't make a big deal about it. Now we'll talk about the T in LGBTQIA+, and that's for trans. So trans people are people whose gender identity is different than the sex they were assigned at birth. So a trans man is somebody who was assigned female at birth, but whose gender identity is male. A trans woman is somebody who was assigned male at birth, but whose gender identity is female. And gender expression or gender identity is socially constructed. So it's like a costume. So it's the way, it's the clothes people wear, their makeup or lack of makeup, their hairstyle, the way that they talk. Gender expression exists on a spectrum of hyper-masculine to hyper-feminine, and it's not related to gender identity or sex. So for example, I identify as a woman, and this doesn't change when I wear jeans or steel caps or a flanny. And similarly, non-binary people are not required to wear unisex clothing. They can wear whatever they like without it affecting their gender. And even conservative societies are used to changing the way they address somebody. So if somebody changes their name or their pronouns, this is something, you know, it's comparable to somebody changing their name after marriage. And we all figure out how to change somebody's name after marriage. And we can do the same if somebody changes their name or pronouns. I'm going to show a video, just a kind of snippet again from Minus 18, and they've got a wonderful video. They've got heaps of great resources actually, and this one is around pronouns. So let me play this one.
When people get my pronouns right, it makes me feel like I'm, like being myself, and people are responding to that and are just like respecting me as a person.
When people get my pronouns right, I feel respected by them and I end up feeling a lot more comfortable around them.
Sometimes if you identify someone with a different pronoun that they don't identify as, you can potentially actually upset them, and I don't think you should be upsetting someone in this process, and that's why I think it's very important to know what someone identifies themselves as and respect it.
It's not about like you're a terrible person if you mess up, or you're a terrible person if you take time to adjust. You're totally not. But it's more about making that extra effort for someone that you do care about, or just kind of being a bit considerate that everyone has different needs, and it's just a really cool thing to do for a person.
It's not always easy to come out and tell people that you're trans.
Never assume someone's pronouns, just ask if you're not sure. Using the correct pronouns is a pretty big deal, and it's a really awesome thing to do.
Genitals don't equal gender.
This is probably the biggest mistake people make. It's a pretty easy assumption to make, but genitals and body don't actually reflect anything about a person's gender at all.
Above all else, don't try and argue with this person, whether you personally agree or not. A person who's asking you to use those pronouns likely has put a lot of thought into it and trusts you.
Basically, what's more important? Someone's anatomy or who they really are and their happiness?
Oh, I love that video. Yeah, so genital doesn't equal gender. So we'll keep moving along. We've got one more topic to kind of cover off.
Yeah, so the last concept then is sexuality, that covers the letters L, G, B, Q, and A.
Yeah, so L in LGBTQIA stands for lesbian, which is a woman who is attracted to or has sex with women. G is gay, so for usually men who are attracted to men. B for bi, so somebody who's attracted or has sex with men and women. And Q is for queer. So historically, the word queer was used in a sort of derogatory way in the past, but more recently has been reclaimed and used more widely in the community. And then A is asexual. So a person who is asexual doesn't experience sexual attraction to people of any gender. Now, this doesn't mean that they are aromantic, so they may still have romantic relationships, but they may not have sex or experience sexual attraction. And then the plus at the end of LGBTQIA+ is kind of just inclusive. It's inclusive of other words used to describe all the other gender and sexual orientations that don't fit into these letters. So pansexual, demisexual, aromantic, it's kind of an umbrella that catches. So unlike pronouns, if you don't know someone's sexuality, there are very few workplace interactions where it would be appropriate to ask somebody about it. In Australia, consenting adults can do whatever they like with each other, generally speaking. It's none of anybody's business. However, it is important to recognise that heterosexuality should not be assumed. And it's always good to consider whether a more inclusive approach or language or image is warranted. Now, Jane, I might throw back to you for some key messages.
Yeah. So I suppose that the key messages that we're encouraging today in our 101 is to really ask and practice using your pronouns and correct yourself if you get it wrong. Some people really struggle sometimes with the pronoun of they, but we use that all the time naturally in our language. When we don't know if it's a male or female, we naturally use the pronoun they. So that is if you saw somebody had left some sunglasses on a table, you would naturally say they may come back for those. So it is about practice and it is about asking, and don't get upset if you get it wrong, because just like when somebody changes their name when they get married, sometimes you might call them by their maiden name, or sometimes you might call them by their married name, and people actually just take a while to get used to it. You can present your own pronouns. As you know, Ange and I have on our signature on our Zoom account that we actually have the pronouns that we use. And that's just a very welcoming way to say that you acknowledge that people use different pronouns and you're prepared to let people know what your pronouns are. But also it just does encourage other people who might say, well, I'm actually a they, and put that on their signature as well. You can also practice catching yourself when you start to make a comment based on gender stereotypes of sexuality. Next time you're with family and friends and there's a little girl or a little boy in that sort of environment, and you go to say hello, catch yourself before you immediately start to think about commenting on about the little girl, what she's wearing, if she's pretty, what she's got in her hair. Think about those things. Catch yourself when you start to reinforce those stereotypes. If there's a little boy, if you start, so he's going to kill some ladies' hearts, he's going to be a lady's boy. You know, catch yourself before you are part of that natural reinforcement of stereotypes, because that is really a way for us to be more reflective on it. And to really wrestle with this concept that gender, sexuality and sex exist on a spectrum. It's not either or, it's just a continuum of, you know, between a whole range of diversity. And that's why we have those beautiful flags of the transgender flags and the LGBTIQ flags, which actually reflect that it's very diverse, and it actually makes our, you know, it's a natural and normal part of our community, of human experience, and it just makes the world far more colourful. So, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I will move on to the next slide in a sec, but I just wanted to share, because we've got a few minutes, a story. Yesterday I was speaking to somebody who plays in a football team, a women's and gender diverse football team, and they have stopped using pronouns in their play, so they don't refer to girls, or, you know, so on the field they won't say get on your girl or get her over there. They'll say your player. And they noticed that when they were playing the opposition was saying, oh, she's over there, she's, you know, get on her. But then by the end of the game, they had started switching to neutral pronouns as well. So, oh, get like your player. So that's just a really powerful way that, so they were able to influence this other team and not assuming anybody's gender that they were playing against. So I'll just jump to the next one, Jane, the gender of the person.
Yeah, so this is a great resource which shows that sex, gender and sexuality exist on a spectrum. And there's a lot of to unpack here, but we will send out the link to this, along with other resources we've mentioned today, for you to explore in your own time. If we go back to those principles of listen and learn and apply, it does encourage you to read and to learn a little bit more and see how you can apply these concepts in your work and at home. And these will be the resources that we'll be sending out. If people want to drop them, you can, if you want to make a note of those, but we'll be sending out these for you to have a look at as well. Okay.
Jane, I can't believe it. We finished a wee bit early. I thought we were going to be really strapped for time. The good thing is then that we have time for a couple of questions, hopefully. And if we can't answer them, we can certainly get the answers to you. So does anybody, you can either kind of unmute or pop it in the chat. Does anyone have any questions about what we've covered in the presentation? It's okay if not, you might get an extra 10 minutes of your lunch break back. No? Okay, wow, okay. Oh, sorry, this one. All right. Jane, do you want to wrap us up? Or...
Well, thank everybody for attending, and we have got all those people who have registered, so we'll be sending you an email that has these resources attached to them.
Yeah, let's put something in the chat. Nope, that's fine. No one's got any questions. Thanks everyone for coming to our CoRE Conversations lunchtime chat. Thank you.